Now you got to learn how that actually works. So I'm going to show you an animation, and I'm going to show you some static pictures. See if we can make sense of it. So see if I can put the animation on the screen. Did you use this in 231, those of you that have the interactive physiology on the web? First time you've seen it? Okay. Now you can use it. So there are links on my webpage that go to free versions of this. This is the one I will pop a CD-ROM. But I'm going to use this for the rest of the day to do the basic hard stuff. So we're going to go through this. And it's not working. There we go. Can you do it? Okay. I don't know what that means. Okay. Okay, so remember
during
from
the
last...
cardiac cycle.
Cool. Okay. All right. So remember from last class, we learned about the valve. What's the job of valves again? No backflow, keep it going the right way. So we're going to be using the valves, the chambers, and the vessels to get the blood to go the right way. In this animation, they're just using the words you learned, pulmonary, aortic, AV, lots of those things. So this is the basic three, these are the basic 3 steps to getting a heart to beat. And so I'm going to try turning off the sound for a second. So we're going to basically do it in that order. So we have ventricular filling, ventricular systole, and isovolumetric relaxation. Let's start with step number 1. First step is ventricle filling. All right, remind me from last class what your ventricles did or were. Where were they? Bottom of the heart. Their job is to do what?
Out.
Pump it out. So we need to fill them before they can pump out. What are we filling it with? Blood. Good.
Oxygen.
So we're going to fill them with blood. How does the blood get there? I mean, what's putting the blood in them? From the atria. Right. Which one, the right or the left? Both. Remember, both sides are going to work together. So both ventricles are getting filled with blood from both atria. Right? So to do that, what do the atria have to do to actually fill the ventricles up? They have to contract. So one of the things that's happening in step 1 is atrial contraction. The atria are squeezing their blood into the ventricles. If you don't like the word contraction, give me another word you can use. Squeezing works for me. Squishing, getting smaller. Doctors, though, will bill you for this big word. Anyone know? Systole or systolic. That in English means contracting. So on a test, I don't care which word you use. Just realize that Saladin loves systole. That means squeezing for $50. Right? So in ventricle filling, I'm taking blood from my atria, squeezing the atria to get the blood into the ventricles. So on this picture, we're going to watch ventricular filling, or little. So we use green blood because it's a Star Trek movie. No one ever gets that. All right. We'll see blue. What did Vulcan have? Green or blue? I don't nerd here. Okay, moving on. So we're using green blood to represent the blood in your body. So we put it into the right atrium in the picture, and we'll be on the left too. They just show one side. So remember it's on both sides. It says, okay, go. Click something. Right atrium, okay? Ooh, see that? Everyone's excited about that? So the blood's going to go from the atria into the ventricle. What did it have to go through to do that? Through valves. So in step number 1.
What's that on top?
Why is who, where, what?
The atria on top.
They are. So it's on, well, it's on top and sort of off to the side. So it's tipped back. It's where they're not actually on the top, they're sort of in the rear.
Yeah, they're like posterior.
Yeah, but if you're a quadruped, it'd be on the surface, but
I'm not.
it's say top. It works anyway. You can just draw the picture like this and pretend that looks like it, right? But it's fine. So let's go through it. So the blood's going to go from the atria through a valve into the ventricle. What valves were there between the atria and the ventricle? What valve is that? Yeah, these are the AV valves, But you can say bicuspid, tricuspid, you can say right and left AV, atrioventriculars. So those valves, are they open or closed?
Open.
They have to be open. Otherwise, there'd be no point to this exercise. So my atria squeeze, or systole. The blood goes from the atria to the ventricles through the open door. Just like Portland Community College. They all come on in through the open door. So my ventricles now are getting full of blood. Make sense? So I just squeeze blood into my ventricles. Let's keep going then. Step 2. Ooh, big words. I like big words. Tell me what that means in English. Ventricular systole. What does systole mean? Contraction. Who's contracting? The ventricles. So step number 2, I'm going to put over here. Back on the light, sorry. So step number 2 of my cardiac cycle is ventricular or ventricle systole. If you don't like the word systole, you can say contraction, ejection. I don't care what word you want to throw there. But my ventricle now is contracting. All right? So let's do that. It says click a ventricle. All right? Turn off the lights so you can see it for sure. Ready to go? Here we go. Why isn't the blood coming out yet?
Because it's only starting squeezing.
What was it? What?
The valve had to close.
The valve. Let's look at that. Look again. Look right here. Watch that. What happened there? Ooh, something closed. What was that?
The AV valve.
Very good. So when we do our ventricular systole, there are lots of things going on. So the ventricles, both sides contract, or systole, or squeeze, and that's going to close a valve. So step B, we have to close valves. Why do we have to close valves? Prevent backflow. Which valves are we closing?
AV.
The ones we just opened over there. So we're going to close the AV valves. We're going to, bless you. So I'm going to close the door behind me, to use my analogy, so blood doesn't go in reverse. That makes a sound. Look at the official sound. Love. Very good. That is the doctor word for $200. So when your heart's going love-dub, you're hearing part of the valve in closing. You shut the door, it makes a noise. So that's a love sound. But we haven't gotten any blood out yet. Right? We just shut the door. So we're going to keep squeezing. So the ventricles continue to squeeze. So all I've done so far is close my door. The blood hasn't gone anywhere yet. I need to do something else. What happens after I keep squeezing long enough? What's going to happen eventually? I'm going to open another door. Let's do that. So I shut the door behind me. Now I have to open the door ahead of me. Let's do that. Ooh. Let's watch that again. Ooh, one more time. Tell me to stop. I can stop at any time. Don't judge me. All right. So then under D, once I've squeezed some more, blue. Not blue, not black. Black works. We're going to open some valves. And what valves are we going to open?
Pulmonary,
Very good.
atrial.
So you can call them the semi-lunar, that's fine. You can call them the pulmonary aortic, pick a word you like. So I'm going to squeeze to shut the door behind me and squeeze some more to open the door in front of me. Now what's the blood doing? Going out. So step E. The blood leaves the heart. So now I got the blood to actually get out of my heart through the open door. What vessel would it be in?
Aorta.
Pulmonary artery.
Arteries, very good. The arteries carry blood away from my heart. So it'd be the aorta if it's on the left, the pulmonary artery on the right. But I'm going to enter my arteries and be heading out to wherever. So I'm squeezing to shut a door, squeezing to open a door, and now the blood ejects, or leaves, or is on its way. That's all happening basically in step 2. Make sense? So I load my ventricles over there, my ventricles eject over here. But we're not done yet. What are we going to do now? Woohoo! Step 3. Put over here. I'm going to relax something. What am I relaxing? What does it say there? The ventricles are going to relax. So I'm going to do ventricles relax. Hey, Dr. Word, what's another way to say relax if you want to charge money? Diastole or diastolic. So diastole means relax, expand, uncontract. It's a word you like to work with. You can say diastole. So my ventricles are now going to relax or uncontract or unsqueeze. Let's do that. It says click the ventricles to return to diastole. Oh, that's no fun. Let's do that again. Ooh, hey, I see something up there. What's happening?
Valve closing.
Which valves?
Semilunar.
Yay! So the semilunar valves have to close. They opened over there. They're closed. Why would they have to close? Otherwise, blood would just come sucking back on in. That makes a sound. What sound is that, E? Dub. Dub or dub. So when you hear your heartbeat, you're hearing steps 2 and 3. Love there, dub here. You're hearing the valves close between the two sides. So my ventricles begin to expand and relax. I have to shut the doors to keep the blood from coming back in. Right? Now let's do that again. Ooh, get that out. And then, what am I going to do now? Hey, I'm going to fill the atrium. I'm going to go back to step number 1. I'm going to open my AV door, let the blood start coming in and redo it. Load, shoot, scores. This is the way to remember it. But you're going to load the ventricle, eject the ventricle, relax, and restart. Oh wait, there's more. We forgot one step in here somewhere. And that is, go over here. What were my atria doing over here? So my ventricles are filling, my atria were, well, at some point if they contract, you have to do something.
Squeeze the blood out of the atrium.
Yeah, you have to relax them, right? Otherwise your cart will get smaller. So we have to add that over to step number 2. There's actually a step here, F we'll call it, where the atria have to relax. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to go back to step number 1 because your atria would still be contracted. And then what's our word for relax again?
Diastole.
Diastole. So it's buried in this ventricular system. So my atria contract first, my ventricles contract while my atria are relaxing, then my ventricles relax, and I go back to my atria ventricle. And that's basically my cardiac cycle. So if I do this all together, like that, with one eye you look at each part, right? So with your fifth eye, so if I'm watching, I'm going to be loading here, atrium to ventricle, step 1. Shut this door, open that door, blood goes out. Close this door, open this door, and go back to step 1. Both sides going at the same time. So it's always 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to put the sound on. And with your one eye, look at this valve. With your third eye, look at this valve. With your 8th ear, listen to the sound. Up, dub, up, dub, up, dub, up, dub. Step 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. So you're hearing steps 2 and 3 when you're shutting the doors, not step 1 officially, not the second. But both sides are sending blood out the arteries. Make sense?
Yes.
question. What happens with an arrhythmia? Like what happens?
An arrhythmia is, we'll get that, that's the cardiac conduction system misfiring.
Oh, okay.
The computer is either the computer or the muscle is misfiring. So it's
That's
out of
good.
So now we're going to make your life a little more difficult. We're going to graph, you know me and graphs, we're going to graph all these things that are happening in the chart. So on your exam, I'm not going to make you graph these. I'm not going to make you interpret the graphs per se. What you have to do is be able to explain or conceptualize why the graphs are doing what they're doing. Right? So don't memorize, well, they'll take pictures, but don't memorize the graph. Just understand why the graphs are changing. Right? So we're going to graph one at a time. I'm going to turn off that little sound just so it doesn't bother you. Okay? So I'm graphing first the atrial pressure. It says left, it could be right. It doesn't matter which atrium I'm picking. I'm graphing the pressure in the atrium. So let's figure that out. When the pressure is climbing right here, what would my atrium be doing when the pressure is going up in the atrium?
It's loading blood.
It's loading blood in my ventricle. It's squeezing, or it's systole, or it's whatever you want to call it, filling. So when the graph of my atria goes up, I see the Vulcan blood coming on in the heart. I'm squeezing the blood to load my ventricles. Let's see if that's true. So if you watch the ventricles, you'll see when they kick in, that graph should go up. Okay on the atria? So I'm squeezing, my pressure goes up. I'm relaxing, my pressure goes down. Cool. All right, smarties. This is the ventricular pressure. And it says left, it could be right. It doesn't matter which one I pick. Okay. I want you to notice two things. When does the ventricular pressure go up? Is it before or after the atrial pressure goes up? After. If you think about it, I load the ventricle with the atrium, step one. Then I do ventricular systole as step two. So I'm going to push with my ventricles after I've filled them in step one. That make sense, the timing? Look at the height. What do you notice about the ventricular graph?
It's a lot higher.
It's a lot higher. Why would a ventricle have more pressure than an atrium?
Wants to overcome.
Because it has to bump more.
Yeah, all those are right. Lots more pressure to overcome. Has to go all the way to my feet and my head. Atria have to go 2 inches, right? Takes more force. So you're seeing the ventricles have to be loaded first. They squeeze really, really hard because they have a really long distance to send the blood in all your arteries. So we expect them to have more pressure. Make sense? Okay? So then, when the graph came down, what are my ventricles doing?
Relaxing.
Relaxing, or doctor speak?
Diastole.
Diastole. So if you look at the very bottom here, this D and S. The D and S stand for ventricular systole or contraction. Step 2, diastole, step 3. So if you look, when my yellow graph is going up, I'm in systole of my ventricle. It's going down, I'm in diastole of my ventricle. Then I reload, I'm going to do it again. So I load it, then fire, relax. Okay, let's watch that again. Make sense? Now, you may be wondering, why is there this other dip here in the pink line? Okay. Just so you know, when the ventricles squeeze, they're going to put pressure on the atria just by pushing. Right? So the atria would increase in pressure a second time. But that's not because the atria are contracting, it's because the ventricles are just making big. They're just going to beat up the atria. Right? But here's my atria, step 1, step 2, step 3. Pause. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Just like that. Make sense? Okay. This is the aortic pressure. What type of vessel is the aorta? So we're talking about these things, where the heart's putting blood in the tubing. So let's see if you can follow along. If you look at the shape of the red, the shape of the yellow, notice how they're the same shape. Okay, that's because the blood from the ventricle is going into the artery. They would be the same pressure. Okay? So as my ventricle is pushing, the blood enters the aorta, raises its pressure, and when the ventricles relax, it lowers the pressure. how come it doesn't go all the way down? How come my pressure stops? What would keep the blood in the aorta and keep having it from not coming out? The pressure and the valves, right? So the blood can't leave my aorta, it has to stay in there because I put a check valve in. So I can boost the pressure and then trap the blood, that's called the dichrotic notch, worthless trivia. And then the pressure has to stay up there because the blood can't go in reverse. It's got to stay in the tubing and go. By the way, if you look at those numbers, 120 over 80, that's where they're getting that math, that graph. That's the distance between when the heart's pushing blood in and the heart's basically keeping the blood from draining out. Right? It's your blood pressure, which we'll do next class. You okay in the aortas? So your arteries will match the ventricle squeezing the blood out to the body. Yes?
So what's it mean if the aortic pressure goes all the way down to 40?
Depends on what it started with. Was it 120, this magical friend of yours?
I mean, no, my blood pressure is really low. Last time I checked, it was like 93 over 43 or 53 or something.
Is that chronically like that, or just in the summer?
It's always low.
You tend to get faint and pass out a lot?
Yeah, I don't pass out, but I get lightheaded.
You won't have a stroke, but you're going to pass out and everyone's going to laugh at you. Yeah. Yeah, so you're trading. High blood pressure is bad, low blood pressure is just embarrassing. I have slightly low blood pressure too, but yeah, what it means is that your heart really isn't working that hard. You're able to get blood to all your extremities with relatively low pressure. So it's a good sign.
Then how do you think because of that?
Well, then if you stand up too quickly, you don't have pressure to overcome gravity, so your brain runs out of
right,
blood.
yeah.
Brains tend to turn off when they, yeah.
Yeah.
You'll notice that especially in the summertime when you get dehydrated, your pressure drops. You have low blood pressure anyway, you sit up and then 5 minutes later everyone's pointing at you on the sidewalk. Yes. Eat potato chips. You doing okay on the aortic pressure?
Is that retaining salt where salt?
Yeah, the idea is if you read salt, that's what you take all right, so here comes the harder graph for people to grasp. This is bottom one. This is ventricular volume, which is the size of the ventricle. Step 2. So let's see. When the ventricle is getting smaller, which means the graph is going down, what's my ventricle doing? It's contracting, it's squeezing, it's systoleing, if that's even a verb, right? It's squeezing, it's getting smaller. And then when my graph is going up, what's my ventricle doing? Getting bigger, or relaxing, or diastolic, or whatever word you like. So I'm squeezing when it goes down. I'm expanding when it goes up. So I want you to look at the yellow graph again, and this bottom graph. When my heart, ventricle, is getting smaller, what should the pressure be doing?
Increasing.
How about that? Because when I squeeze on the blood, the pressure should climb. When my heart's getting bigger, pressure should what? Just like that. So that's the concept. This one and this one are inverted of each other. So as my heart gets smaller, the pressure climbs. My heart gets bigger, the pressure goes down in terms of the squeezing. Make sense? So this one should correlate to that one. Let's watch that. Now, where my mouse is pointing, what happened at that little peak there? What did the size of the heart do? It increased, it got bigger. Why would my heart get bigger there? What do you think is making it bigger? It's filling with blood. Own it, say it, yeah! Let's put on a big rule over here. And that has to go back to step number 1. You're filling the blood from your atria into your ventricle. The goal of step number 1 has a big name. It's called Starling's Law of the Heart. So in step 1, you're trying to do Starling's Law, which you don't have to remember his name, it's Starling's Law. Here's what Starling said. If you stretch the heart, how could you stretch a heart? By putting it full of blood, right? I'm going to make you expand. If I stretch the heart, what will my heart do in response? Contract harder. The heart, quote, snaps back. And increases force. Does is also called the rubber band effect. If you take a rubber band and stretch it more, what do rubber bands do the more you stretch them? They hit harder, right, all over your thumb and you cry, like me. So, the more I can stretch my heart out, the more my heart will want to go back to the original size and therefore push the blood harder. This is negative feedback, right? The more I stretch it, the more it wants to fight the stretch. This is called Starling's law. So who is stretching, or what is stretching my heart?
Blood.
The blood from who? The atria. So the job of the atria is to help extrally, is that even a word? Stretch my heart. If you're an EMT type, they call this preloading. I'm adding more load to my heart so it will stretch back more. Another word you'll hear is atrial kick. Also kind of an EMT word. Your atria is given it a kick to help the heart pump harder. So if you look at my graph over here, my atria contracted and increased the size of my heart that much. So therefore I have that much more squeezing I can do on my blood, and thereby raise my force that much more by stretching my heart out. So that's a good thing. You want to stretch your heart so it can snap back harder within reason. Right? And that's the job of your atria, is to preload or kick your ventricles. If your atria were not working, your heart could still beat, but you'd lose that extra bit of force that they provide. In fact, if you go back, just to show you I'm not making this up, which is this one here. You kind of read through this, blood flows passively into the ventricles. Because of the bottom chamber, gravity helps pull blood into them. So you don't need an atria to fill your heart. You need the atria to force the extra blood in, to give it the extra Starling's boost. Right? So the atria's job is to, quote, preload or amplify or kickstart or rubber band, lots of words you can use. And that's shown by this little extra peak. I'm gaining force. Make sense? So Starling's law of the heart. The more you stretch it, the more it'll snap back. Assuming you have a normal, healthy heart. Cool. Then let's do this one. So we're going to learn this thing next. We're going to use an EKG or ECG. So ignore that in your eye right now. So let's put them all together. So with each of your eyes, you want to look at each graph and what you're seeing. And then we're going to throw on the love dove on top of it. And you're going to sit here and pretend you're on drugs while looking at all those graphs.